fresh treats. Located off Victoria and Grand, more at cafelatte.com.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Coming to you live from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TheGailey Show. This is The Gailey Show. I'm your host, JP Derabagosian. In studio with me is our executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, y'all.
And in the control room today is producer Brett Johnson.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing?
Doing all right in here. How about you?
I love that it's actually warm outside, and also just feel like I'm hiding from the rest of the world that seems to be falling apart around us.
Blame you.
But what is on the show today? Speaking of falling apart, Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, will be here at 2:30. As you can imagine, there's going to be a lot to unpack with Christopher. But up first, author Joseph Lezza is here. Joseph is a pushcart and 3-time Best of the Net nominee for his writing. His debut memoir, I'm Never Fine, Scenes and Spasms on Loss, was a finalist for the 2024 Eric Hoffer Book Award and the 2021 Prize Americana in Prose. I wanted to talk with Joseph because he's been publishing a series of essays over the past few months that had some really interesting takes on America and a variety of topics within there. And like Joseph, or like me rather, Joseph holds dual citizenship. He with Italy and the US, I'm with France and the US, which makes for a different perspective on what the fork is happening around us. So Joseph, welcome back to The Gailey Show.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah. So did I see on your Blue Sky feed that you recently canceled your Target card?
I sure did.
Oh, thank you for that. You didn't have to do that, though. I mean, obviously, for folks who know, Target is based here in the Twin Cities, and Twin Cities Pride just recently cut ties with them over their ridiculous decision to roll back their DEI programs, which included sourcing materials and products from marginalized businesses. So yeah, if you want to hear that episode, by the way, as I'm thinking about that, Twin Cities Pride Amplified put out an episode yesterday. You can find streaming and on am950radio.com where they talk through why they made that decision to cut ties. But thank you, Joseph, for taking that extra step. You don't even live here in the cities, and you were like, haha, Target.
Good job.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish that I could say that it was, me making this big statement. It's really more, it really just came down to me, if I can borrow like a really overused phrase over the last couple of months, it came down to me just not holding space for fair weather friends. Mm-hmm. And, I had already probably seen like a pretty decent decrease in the frequency of my visits anyway, just in life. I didn't find much reason to go there. I had the card. I used it quite often for a while, and it started just to be like, this useless thing that I had in my wallet. And frankly, Target choosing to do what they did me a big favor, because it just made it very easy for me to close that account.
Yep.
And they have been a fair weather friend for a while.
Description. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. But I want to start our conversation with one of your recent essays. I went to Disney World, and all I got was this identity crisis. And in it, you recount, first of all, excellent title. Thank you as a reader. But you recount in the essay being laid off, deciding to visit your friend in Los Angeles, the Going to Disney World part. And on the way back in LAX, you read a headline, Job Searcher 22 with APs and 3 international baccalaureates takes life after 250 job rejections. And you wrote that that headline shocked you to your toes, rather. Tell me more.
Yeah, so a great deal of the writing that I've been doing lately stems from this period of my life, this fairly extended period of my life when I was between jobs, we'll say. And, this particular piece takes place like fairly early on in that process. The sting is still very fresh. And I'm sort of doing this like inventory of all of the jobs and all the places that I've worked over the last, few years, Disney being one of them, and kind of recounting the story about how much of my personality, like I really built around this place, this job, this great big thing that I was a part of. And just truly how much of ourselves we sink into these things, into these titles and these roles. And And without them, how very quickly we realize that we don't really quite know who we are fully. Like we invest so much of ourselves in these jobs, these experiences, and forget to sort of cultivate the stuff outside, that we don't. It comes as quite a bit of a shock to us. And so in this piece, I kind of use, for in order to be sufficiently gay, I use a specific episode of Sex and the City called Splat, in which there's this character who's this 80s party girl, kind of like wheeling her way around a room of people who are more mature, who have kind of aged out of that, but she's still very much at the fair. She's never left. She's hanging on to this thing that sort of rounded out who she was and what she was known for. But she's kind of looked at as a relic among all of these people of a bygone era, we'll say. And it sort of leads to her downfall in a somewhat comical but very serious way. And I'm kind of doing the same thing in this piece. I'm going through this historical inventory. I'm kind of seeing myself a little bit as a relic. And then the minute I get out of that bubble, the minute I return to the airport and I'm headed back to the real world, I read this article about this person who was just so completely crushed by this dehumanizing and demoralizing search for work, just so desperately wanted to find this purpose. And rejection after rejection led them to, very sadly, take their own life. And it really did shock me down to my toes, because it is incredibly serious. And I think it is incredibly emblematic of just how much of our human valuation we sink into this idea of our ability to just make a paycheck and to land a job. And, there is so much more to us outside of all of that. But I think in the absence of cultivating that, it can be incredibly crippling when we don't get that external validation.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't watched Sex and the City in a long time, but when you mentioned that, I started reading that. I'm like, oh, I remember that episode. And when you say downfall, well,
Yeah.
it works on multiple.
We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
On multiple episodes, levels rather. But so then you kind of continue the themes that you're exploring there in your essay from a little bit later, The Same Banana. You're still on the job hunt, but this time you're on a vacation with your mom in Costa Rica, having culinary adventures, shall we say, fielding an interview request for a job at a dream company. So you're exploring clearly a lot in this essay, but the sentence that really stood out for me was near the end about, much as I'd sought to be distant and invincible and sovereign over my own sense of worth, some measure of power would always sit in the hands of others. Unpack that for us.
Right. Well, again, so much of this journey that I'm attempting to capture in the writing that I'm doing is this journey towards self-possession, reclaiming the self. And at the same time, so much of who we are and what we do is based on these transactional relationships. We still need that job. We still need that paycheck. We need that person to see the value in us in order to give us that opportunity. So in that particular piece, as you say, I'm on vacation and I'm trying to, I'm sort of sitting on both sides of the fence, right? I'm away from my old life, my conventional life. And at the same time, I'm still trying to make sure that I don't lose progress or whatever it is on that journey. And so, the piece does start out with me sort of getting that interview request and, acknowledging the fact that, this dynamic, this dichotomy waits for me back home. But meanwhile, on this trip, I'm surrounded by all of these people. I kind of have this opportunity to live sort of the best version of myself. I can sort of espouse the things about myself that I'm very proud of. And in an effort, a very blatantly superficial and unsuccessful effort to just be so impressive to all of these people on this trip. And it all rings incredibly hollow and none of it really works. So, on the last night or so of our trip, I do, again, what the gay man do. I opened up Tinder and I'm just scrolling through and I happen to, match with someone and we decide to meet up for a drink. And, I take an incredible risk to my personal self by going to the strange, person's house in a strange land. And I come to find out that they are, they themselves a stranger from another country, sort of like they're on a work program. But we have this like wonderful experience where we just kind of like, get to know each other and provide each other company. And, we never really talk about work. We never really talk about what each other person does. It really just becomes about who we are as individuals and, being there, being that company, being that, that sense of validation for each other. And I really wanted to explore this idea between valuation and validation. And we do have to accept that some measure of that always lies in another person's hands, and no matter what the dynamic is.
What I've appreciated about your writing, of these essays that you've been publishing over the past few months, is exploring this idea of alienation. If I may use that word, I don't want to necessarily project that word onto you, but that's what it raises for me, is this idea of alienation. And I think does that situate itself differently now within as it turns out, we were careening to this political moment. And now we're in it. How does that sense of valuation and alienation change for you now that we're in this moment?
It's really interesting that you say that, because I was recently having a discussion with somebody who I guess could sort of tell that I was a little struck and a little nervous and quite knocked down by the recent proceedings. And they encouraged me, I'll never forget these words, they encouraged me to make my world smaller as a way of dealing with it, as a way of living through it, in order to sort of combat the alienation, so to speak. And I didn't quite know how to feel about that, because on the one hand, it is dangerous to be sort of, to have this global mindset 24/7. There's just so much happening at once. And there is a feeling of powerlessness that comes with it. And you want to solve all these problems, but you don't know what you can do from your own house, from your own couch. And, that can be crippling and exhausting. And it can be good to sort of, make your world smaller, so to speak, and do little things that bring you joy and just find ways of, of sort of becoming steadfast, however you possibly can do that.
We got to fit in a short break here. More with author Joseph Lezza on the flip side. Be sure to follow us on Blue Sky for ticket giveaways, progressive news, and you can also see Joseph and I talk about best Christmas rom-coms. You're listening to The Gaily Show.
Experience a brand new musical bursting with imagination and surprises. Milo imagines the world. A wildly creative young boy spends his time on a crowded train car, imagining the lives of the passengers around him, and sees his dreams come to vivid life in the form of vibrant songs and energetic dance numbers, with tunes ranging from pop to hip-hop to country. You won't want to miss this stunning new production that the Chicago Reader called an absolute delight. Milo Imagines the World is on stage at Children's Theater Company beginning February 4th. Get your tickets today at childrenstheater.org.
Are you struggling with cognitive decline, post-COVID brain fog, ADHD, concussion, tremors from Parkinson's, mental health issues, or simply striving to optimize your brain's potential? Hypercharge Wellness Brain Health specifically offers cutting-edge modalities including quantitative EEG, transcranial laser, red light therapy, all which work holistically, amplifying focus and cognitive functions. Utilizing these modalities in tandem enhances neural activities, optimizes the brain's electrical patterns, reduces anxiety, and enhances relaxation, ensuring a comprehensive approach to brain health optimization. All are invited to experience this life-changing journey towards achieving optimal cognitive and emotional well-being. Call or schedule online your free Hypercharge Wellness introductory session valued at $200 today. This is your opportunity to feel the difference for yourself. No matter where you are in the Twin Cities, there's a convenient location near you. Visit hyperchargeclinic.com now. Check out our 5-star reviews on our website. Hypercharge is hope.
This is Andy Otto, your host of Twin Cities Pride Amplified, inviting you to join us this Saturday at 3 p.m. as we talk about an issue that's been on a lot of minds. Target, a Minnesota-based company that has been a staple at the festival, but this year will not be returning. What that means and so much more. Plus, what does allyship look like in this changing landscape? That's this Saturday at 3 p.m. right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
If you go to shoprainbowrd.com, you will find an amazing variety of adult novelties, literally thousands of items that you can peruse in the privacy of your home and have shipped to your door. Plus, in the store, you can find swimwear, casual wear, underwear, everywhere. Rainbow Road is located at 109 West Grand Street near Loring Park. Gift cards are available for the hard to shop for. Go to shoprainbowrd.com.
Hi, this is Frank Brown of Minuteman Press Uptown with a question for our local small businesses. Do you want more leads, more store traffic, more customers? Thousands of local businesses, just like yours, count on Minuteman Uptown to drive sales. We make your business stand out and show out. We print everything from signage, promotions, and direct marketing. We connect you to the community. Choose Minuteman Uptown because we share your values and we are a proud union shop. Contact us today at mpuptown.com.
Welcome back to the Gailey Show. I'm JP Fairbergosian. With us today is author Joseph Lezza, whose memoir, I'm Never Fine, was named a most anticipated best book by BuzzFeed, Them, Stylecaster, and Lambda Literary. And apparently certain folk on the social media also awarded him best hair on the internet. Not that I'm jealous or think that whole thing was rigged. But Joseph, thank you for staying with us for another segment of the show. You were just talking about something that Jim and I were like, oh, we want to keep going with that, about coping by making your world smaller. Talk more about that, about how that is a useful strategy for dealing with the chaos that we're having to live through at this moment.
I mean, I certainly think that it can be useful in the sense that it is as you say, it's a coping mechanism, right? It's a means of getting by when things just become a bit too much to handle. And so, I mean, that could be just as simple as, turning off social media for a minute. That could be just as simple as maybe turning off the news and just watching a show that makes you happy, something that you've watched 1,000 times. Like, I know that these are all sort of like trivial things, but it's kind of amazing how powerful the trivial can be sometimes. But again, like, as I was saying, before we broke, I don't advocate for living your life 100% one way or the other. I think we have to live somewhere in the middle. I think we have to be cognizant and aware of what's going on in the world, but we also have to sort of acknowledge our limitations, do what we can, but we need to preserve the self at the end of the day. And I don't mean that to sound, I don't mean that to sound selfish in a way, but we can't help if we're not helping ourselves to some extent, right? So I believe that we can make our worlds smaller when we need to, but I certainly think that it can become too easy to live within that small world and never leave it. So it's tough.
I want to talk about your book, but first, this month you did the Queer Love Project questionnaire, and they asked you, what do you like about dating as a LGBTQ person? What was your answer?
It was sort of a two-sided answer. What I like about dating within the queer community, outside of the opportunity to just meet people, is that I've come to sort of learn, or at least suspect, that queer people learn growing up, to speak a similar language. And it's not even necessarily a language of actual words. It can be. But I think we learn to communicate through humor. I think we learn to communicate through couched language. I think we learn to communicate through expressions. And I think unconsciously we understand that. And despite whatever we're speaking on the surface level, I think on a deeper level, we're communicating and understanding each other. And that can be a really beautiful thing. What's tough about it is what I think is tough about the dating scene in general, is that I think we've become very reliant on these apps and these algorithms, which to some extent, I think, and this is not an original observation, but I believe that I do think that they've come to sort of perpetuate this sense of like disposability among people. Like at any point, in time during your day, you have thousands, if not millions of people sitting in your back pocket. And, because of that, you just feel like, and the sense that you're literally just swiping through people, I think it devalues the person in a way. I think it is kind of gross. I myself actually just kind of deleted mine for a while just because I just wasn't like the way it was making me feel. I think that, people are worth more than that. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Your book, I'm Never Fine, amazing collection of essays. And I know I've told you this before. You also had one of the best sentences in the past decade that I absolutely adore. We're
No
ditch
pressure.
and that's all I'm going to say. We're ditch people now with a D. I don't want the FCC coming after me. Look out for that essay at the end. But tell us about your book.
So I'm Never Fine is, it chronicles my life as a caregiver, or a period of my life as a caregiver for a parent who had a terminal illness and then subsequently passed. And so it kind of looks at that journey in 3 phases, like pre-diagnosis, diagnosis and treatment, and then loss, grief, and sort of, the reckoning that we have to do with ourselves. And what I wanted to do when I wrote the book is sort of tell the story of somebody actively grieving, warts and all. I think that a lot of these stories that I've read about people who have lost individuals, they're wonderful books, but I think sometimes they can adopt a sort of an overtly reverent tone when it comes to it. You want to be respectful of the dead. You want to you certainly want to paint yourself in a wonderful light, that you were this, this doting son or daughter and this great caregiver. But I think that when people who are going through grief read these stories and maybe making mistakes and maybe doing things that they're not exactly proud of, and maybe even finding moments of laughter when they don't feel like they shouldn't, I think they can almost feel excluded. I think they can almost feel like, maybe they're even grieving wrong or processing wrong. And so what I hope to do in writing this book was really just tell my story, the good, the bad, the ugly, the embarrassing, the comical, and not tell any sort of, not teach any lesson, not sort of impart any message, but just really to just share the fact that, grief does not take one form, and there really is no wrong way to do it. So if you think you're doing it wrong, if you think you're making a mistake, you're not.
I love that. I think the essay about you providing shaving your dad was is a craft essay. I know I've told you this before as well. Folks need to be teaching that essay. But you also have an essay about to a grandparent that's written as a letter, and I think that the letter is sort of, it's a definite, I don't know. I feel like something that queer people do is the genre of writing letters to family members. We've only got a couple minutes here left, but can you talk about that particular essay and why you wanted to write that as a letter to your grandmother?
Well, so many essays in the book sort of, in the writing world, I guess we refer to them as hermit crabs. Like, so many of the essays are an essay that, crawls into the shell of something else. You mentioned the shaving essay, that takes the form of a step-by-step guide, as if there ever could really be a step-by-step guide for something like that. One essay emulates, the gameplay of Oregon Trail. There's a bunch of them in there. That one particular was written to a grandparent after she herself had passed. And I really just wrote it as almost like a therapeutic exercise. There is an exercise that if you are actively in therapy and you have unresolved issues with a person, very often your counselor, whoever, will tell you to just write a letter to them, write a letter that you never planned to send, but that will allow you to sort of get this all out on paper. And, there were a lot of unresolved issues between myself and my grandmother. And, I chose to write it in that way because there was an element of forgiveness and understanding that I had to reach. It wasn't doable via a conversation. And I also think that forgiveness kind of needs to be solicited, and it wasn't solicited from me. So I had to sort of forgive without that solicitation. And so I thought, I'm just going to write this letter. I'm going to get it all down on paper. But it's not just going to be this airing of grievances, right? I have to use it for a purpose. And so within this essay, what I hope to do is try to understand what her perspective was, and maybe
to leave it there. I'm so sorry.
Absolutely. No, I can go on and
His
on. It's my
website,
fault.
JosephLezza.com. That's 2 Z's. Follow him on Blue Sky. We're going to take a break. Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, is here. We'll be talking about everything. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Peter Solak.
And I'm Adam Ostrowski.
We are here at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces to talk about the joy of live fire cooking. Cooking over a live fire is the oldest and most basic form of cooking.
What's new is in the way fire is handled and its heat is managed.
It's easier to experience and enjoy the smell and taste of food cooked over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces sells and installs live fire grills, fire pits, and ovens. Let us help you experience the smell, the taste, the fun of cooking with fire.
Pizza was first made and is still best made in an open fire oven. The radiant and conductive heat of a live fire is unmatched for wood roasting and baking artisan breads too.
Come see the many ways you can cook over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has over 35 working wood and gas units on display at the corner of East Franklin and Riverside Avenue in Minneapolis. More information at woodlandstoves.com. Find the fire that works for you. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. Out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
This is Santita Jackson, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I couldn't be more excited about starting our days together, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central, on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.
Queermunity, the new LGBTQ cafe, social club, and resource center, is now open in the heart of uptown Minneapolis. Dine in at our full-service cafe, rent a co-working desk, or one of our spacious offices. Did I mention our program and social events calendar is stacked? None of this is possible without our members. Our basic membership plan earns you up to $120 annually that you can redeem in the cafe or on parking. Plus, enjoy a 10% discount at the cafe or on space rentals. Also, our community partners provide our members with exclusive discounts, and the savings only go up from there with our higher membership plans. We've never had an LGBTQ resource center that offers a dedicated space where queer folks can go to whenever they need to feel safe, seen, and loved. Your membership keeps Queermunity open. Hey, Christopher, just want to make sure that your mic and all the tech is
Go for a
working.
quick mic check before we're on.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, and you can
Okay,
hear us?
perfect. Yes.
Okay. Watch the chat. We'll give you some time cues in there. Otherwise, for now, we got to switch back over to the broadcast.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Sounded good. All right, I'll put you guys back on. Hold on.
I interview captivating and influential guests, but the first Saturday of every month is the co-host show with my two amazing co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Austin Ballhagen, and I'm here talking about Minnesota politics.
And I'm Matt Amundsen, and I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So don't forget, every Saturday at 5 p.m., the Downright Upright Show with Philip Anthony. And I hope you're all feeling fantabulous!
ATN AM 950, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for partly sunny skies today with a high near 38. Tonight, clear with a low around 29. And Thursday, sunny with a high around 47. Catch Caleb Heron at the Fillmore in Minneapolis on March 9th. One of America's top gay comedians, Caleb brings his So True tour to town with sharp humor and big laughs. Plus, he's joined by special guests. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com for Caleb Heron live at the Fillmore March 9th. That's Ticketmaster.com.
Broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TheGailey Show. I literally just blanked on our YouTube address. I don't say it 17 times a day. This is The Gailey Show. I am your host, JP Debragosian. Executive producer Jim Pounds is still with me here in the studio.
Hey, all.
And Brett Johnson, our producer, is in the control room with us, making all the magic happen.
Absolutely. Good to have you guys back in.
Yes.
Good interview coming up, too.
Yeah, well, yes. Christopher Kane, the White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, is joining us here. The Washington Blade is the newspaper of record in the D.C. area and covers national and international news of import to you. And if you're not reading them, you need to be reading them. You can go to their website, washingtonblade.com. Christopher, it's been 2 weeks since we saw you. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me back. I'm thrilled to be here.
So there's so much to get to. I guess let's start with the most recent. Is it the most recent? I looked at the breaking news here in about 30 minutes, but the trans-military ban. Tell us what's happening there. When does it take effect? If it's I think it's on pause, but you've been also talking to service members about it too, right?
Yeah, thanks so much. So this is really what I've been focusing on last week and this week. I actually just got back from Las Vegas, where I was attending the Creating Change conference, which is hosted by the National LGBTQ Task Force. And I thought it would be a valuable time to go be in some progressive circles while the new Republican government's taking over in Washington. And at the conference, I was able to meet several service members who were trans, a couple that had retired, and a couple that were still serving, and profiled them for a story. In terms of your first question about where things stand with the ban, my understanding is that right now there is a lot of, we're waiting on some clarification from the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who was confirmed on Friday. So we don't know exactly how it's going to be effectuated. My understanding and the understanding of most people who have been following this is that it's going to be, for those who are currently serving, they're looking at medical discharges. But what typically happens anytime an individual is separated from the military is that they convene, groups. You have to have a commanding officer who indicates a reason for which the soldier or service member can no longer serve. And then they convene a board, whether it's a medical board or what have you, a disciplinary board, perhaps, if something doesn't rise to the level of court-martial. But it's a long bureaucratic process. And so there really is no precedent for summarily dismissing, up to 15,000 capable and proven service members. So that's really going to be the tricky part, even trickier than prohibiting the enlistment and the decision of new transgender service members is getting rid of those who are already serving.
In your reporting, what are those service members saying?
So, I feel like I got so lucky putting together the story because I was able to talk with people who had joined the military, who had enlisted straight out of high school, people that graduated from West Point and commissioned as officers for 4 different branches. And so they have a really wide swath of experience. Some people have worked in intelligence, other people have been deployed to war zones and seen combat. The things that they have in common are, number one, that they all are selflessly serving and enlisted to serve this country, and also to take advantage of the opportunities that the military provides for education and all kinds of other things. And number two, that almost without exception, they were supported by their superiors and the men and women in uniform who they were fighting with. And so it really is a solution in search of a problem, this policy trying to ban service members. And it's also just a huge slap in the face for, trans people are twice as likely than cisgender people to enlist in the first place. And so to spit in the face of that sacrifice, I think is really something they struggle with, understandably.
I didn't know that the stat was 2 times higher, because I've seen some reporting that there is a men problem, a cisgender men problem of particularly conservative men not wanting to enlist. And so folks are saying, why are we turning away people who want to enlist? And now you're saying that the number is 2 to 1 of folks, trans folks wanting to be in the service. The Trump administration tried this 8 years ago and they failed. Due to efforts such as, I think Lambda Legal spearheaded that effort. What is different this time? Do they think they're going to, what is different about their approach this time? Are they just trying to get it done and think this time around they've got the courts, or is there new things in this executive order that are different from last time around?
So that's a really good question. And to tell you the truth, I didn't follow very closely what happened with the first order in 2017. I understand there was a federal judge that issued an injunction to halt the enforcement of that rule. The 2017 rule, though, only targeted new enlistments and new commissioned members. So it basically had I don't know if it explicitly contained a grandfather clause or if it just didn't contain a provision that would have kicked out those who were already serving at that time. But my understanding is that the intention now is to take it further and separate trans people from the military that are already serving. So that's going to be a major difference.
Wow. Okay. Well, we will look to you to keep us updated on this particular story.
I think a fascinating conversation would be with the recruitment people in the military. They must be furious because I'm sure their job is hard enough as it is without something like this. Wow.
Well, Jim, that's exactly right. And JP, as you were saying earlier about readiness and retention, these are things that came up often in my interviews with these folks. Everybody can see it that there is a major problem with recruiting and keeping people enlisted. So this absolutely cuts against that effort.
And there have already been legal challenges filed. Do we know that is there an injunction currently, or you said earlier that I don't even want to say this phrase, Defense Secretary Hegseth.
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
So I'm assuming, does that mean that the challenges are there can't be an injunction until he makes a decision?
So an injunction is an order from a judge that halts the enforcement of a new policy. So I don't actually, I believe there would have to be a new injunction against this executive order because, backing up a little bit. So after 2017, when 2020, when Joe Biden was elected, one of the first things he did on, I believe, his very first day in office was rescinding the Trump-era trans-military ban. And so the first thing that Trump did was rescinding the revocation of that ban. So in its place, they need a new policy, which is what we saw on Monday. And that's what we're waiting for clarification on. Now, you're correct that there has already been a complaint filed by the Human Rights Campaign and Lambda Legal. And I think there might be other groups that also are suing separately, National Center for Lesbian Rights, I think, and a couple others, often, helped by a white shoe law firm. So I don't know exactly on which grounds they're suing or even whether they're seeking an injunction. I don't know if they're gonna have to wait until there's more clarity on what the enforcement looks like. But a lot of open questions, and that's kind of unfortunately been a theme throughout the last couple of weeks. We've seen a lot of really decisive and bold action, and a lot of confusion and uncertainty, and a lack of clear direction in terms of enforcement.
Well, and also it just seems like there's no plan, like we saw with the freezing of federal aid.
Right, exactly what I was thinking. Totally.
The executive orders. So we're a week out. There's a distinction that you were just mentioning it about. So last week, Trump issued 2 executive orders that he penned himself attacking the queer community. The bulk of what he did was rescinding 7 orders that Biden had implemented. So a slew of rights and protections at the federal level were ripped away. Can you unpack a little bit more for us now and your reporting of what you're seeing of what was contained in all of these orders and rescindings? Because there's a lot that was going on that even like as of this week, I was like, there was a whole foster care element that I didn't even know about until I was trying to dive into these things. So what can you tell us now a week out from the issuance of these executive orders?
Yeah. So, this is a really good question. And I'm not trying to punt when I say this, but I'm still catching up a little bit from being out of town. There's a lot there. And you're right to point out the foster care piece. I think that's really important. Another piece is housing transgender women in men's correctional facilities and prisons. That's another piece of what we saw from the executive orders or the revocation of Biden-era executive orders. So there's a lot there. There's, the anti-discrimination piece is really big. So the Trump administration is saying that the Bostock ruling, which was the U.S. Supreme Court case in 2020 that decided that sex-based discrimination includes discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, was misapplied, is what the Trump administration is arguing. And so that is providing the basis for all kinds of non-discrimination rules in employment, as well as in education and healthcare and elsewhere, that are not codified by a federal statute because the Equality Act has not been passed yet. So the Biden administration was really aggressive in trying to clarify for the agencies that per the Bostock ruling, sex-based discrimination, again, includes anti-LGBTQ discrimination, not just in employment, which was the Bostock case, but also in these other realms. So that's another big piece of what we're seeing from the Trump administration. But again, we're I think a lot remains to be seen in terms of, as we wait for more clarity here.
It's only been, it feels like an eternity. It's really what, 10 days?
Yeah.
And it's leading through chaos is
Mhm.
really their strategy. How is that showing up in the reporting that you're doing in terms of what you're seeing, like reactions right now? I mean, is it sort of just stunned that folks, a stunned feeling that people have? Are they trying to, is it even possible to resist right now? Like, what is the feeling that you're seeing in DC about trying to get a grasp on everything that's been happening in just 10 days?
That's a really good question. So, standing back a minute and looking at what the Democratic lawmakers and elected leaders have been saying, we're not seeing much of a cohesive oppositional message from the Democrats, unfortunately. In terms of the chaos interpretation of this, like, I think that they're more organized than they were the first time. That does not mean, of course, that there's total clarity with the executive actions that are coming out of this White House, because they're being bold. They're being very, very bold. And so it does seem like they're testing the courts, and they're also testing the American public, frankly, to see how much people are willing to put up with. So it'll be interesting to see.
Can you tell more about the sense that they're more organized this time?
Yes. So, I did not cover the first Trump administration, but in a lot of cases during the first administration, efforts, you can look at the immigration piece, I think is a good example of this, to where some of the more ambitious policy aims of the administration were never effectuated. Because either, if you ask Trump and his team, they would say because of the deep state and their enemies within, the federal government that are, the career civil servants that are prohibiting his agenda from being implemented and so on. But I think a more objective and an accurate interpretation is that in a lot of cases, the people running the show didn't really understand how government works. And there was a lot that was not understood about what is required through congressional action versus what can be done through executive action. So we're seeing a bit more organization there, and you also can look to the folks that he has nominated for these appointments. So, Kash Patel's confirmation hearing, I believe, is tomorrow. So this is somebody who has vowed to help Trump get revenge on his political enemies and so on. So he's installing loyalists in his cabinet, and that's a huge difference between the last time around.
This is why I'm so glad that we have you here to help us unpack and understand what's happening there. We are going to fit in a quick break here. More with Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade. You can check out all of his reporting at washingtonblade.com. Keep it tuned here to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF.
Hey everyone, this is longtime AM 950 host Ellie Krug. I'm thrilled to announce my brand new show, The Illegal Trans Woman, which takes advocacy from my community, transgender and gender variant people, up several big notches. The Illegal Trans Woman will feature interviews, commentary, and information aimed at pushing back against efforts to oppress trans and gender variant humans. Please tune in on Saturdays at 4 or wherever you go to get your podcasts. And do me a favor, share about the show. Thanks.
If you go to shoprainbowrd.com, you will find an amazing variety of adult novelties, literally thousands of items that you can peruse in the privacy of your home and have shipped to your door. Plus, in the store, you can find swimwear, casual wear, underwear, everywhere. Rainbow Road is located at 109 West Grand Street near Loring Park. Gift cards are available for the hard to shop for. Go to shoprainbowrd.com.
Progressive change doesn't just happen. It takes dedication and a lot of hard work. 25 years ago, the Data Bank pioneered a new generation of software tools for progressive organizations here in Minnesota. Since then, thousands of organizations have used the Data Bank to create progressive change. Today, the Data Bank continues to help progressive organizations like AM 950. To have the Data Bank help your organization build capacity and create more change, text CHANGE to 612-540-0500 or go to thedatabank.com. The Data Bank, a quarter century of dedication and hard work for progressive organizations.
At Queermunity, savor our seasonal menus from our chef, June Day, a James Beard Awards semifinalist. We feature locally sourced foods grown and produced by queer and BIPOC farmers. A full-service cafe offering your favorite cold brew coffees, hot teas, cider spritzes, and our very own house-made chai lattes. Start your day with our smoked bacon and egg breakfast sandwiches served on a biscuit with chipotle mayo and cheddar cheese. Vegan? Try our vegan sausage, egg, and cheese. For lunch, pair our seasonal salads and soups with a caprese panini served on Rose Street baguettes. Try one of our chickpea salad sandwiches, or enjoy the comfort of our grilled cheese with mouth-watering provolone, cheddar, and Gruyere melting on Rose Street breads. We serve sweet and savory pastries, and check out our new bar menu featuring local beer, wine, and custom double hard seltzers. Mention AM 950 at the cafe register for a free beverage with entree purchase. The Queermunity Cafe is open 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. More info at queermunitymn.com.
End-of-life decisions are not easy to make. Hi, I'm Mary T. of Mary T. Hospice Care. It's important to make sure that this difficult time is meaningful and comforting to you and your loved ones. Our hospice team provides an individualized program of physical, emotional, spiritual, and practical care so your loved one is comfortable and not in pain. At Mary T. Hospice, we understand that choosing the right hospice care provider can be overwhelming, but we're here to assist you. Learn more today at marytinc.com.
Welcome back to the Gailey Show. I'm your host, JP Derbogosian. We are here with White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, Christopher Kane. Christopher, you were mentioning before the break that there doesn't seem to be a cohesive response coming from the left, specifically the Democratic Party. Do you have a sense of why that is? I mean, all of this is Project 2025, and we knew Project 2025 was coming. So does it seem a little bizarre that there isn't more of a cohesive response to it?
Yes, it does in one sense, especially in the sense that you just pointed out. I think that's an interesting, a very interesting point, because you're right. The Democrats have been calling attention to Project 2025, and now we're seeing that effectuated officially in policy, not just by the White House, but also in both chambers of Congress. On the other hand, I think it does make sense, though, because Democrats, and I'm going to make a gross generalization here, but I think what we've seen is a reluctance to say anything for fear that they might say the wrong thing. And I think the lesson of Trump and the MAGA movement is that it's almost always better to say something, even if it's the wrong thing, than to say nothing, because that vacuum is going to be filled very quickly. So I think there needs to be less caution around messaging and more focus on getting the message out and making sure that, look at the fact that Democrats are reluctant to go on Fox News, with the exception of Pete Buttigieg and some other people. I think we should probably encourage Democrats to do more of that kind of thing.
It's baffling to me about how they could be afraid of saying the wrong thing when we literally have a president who said he sent in the military to turn on the water in California, and that can be so objectively proven false in about 20 seconds.
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Democrats hold themselves to a different standard.
We've taken it upon ourselves to report the price of eggs here in Minnesota on a regular basis. That's been our.
Is that right?
That's our counter move. They've gone up 60%.
It's not just our show, man. We're trying to hold folks to account. They said that grocery prices were coming down.
Did you see that executive order targeting grocery prices? It was basically like directing the Commerce Department to bring down prices. Okay.
That's how that works, though, right? You can just tell people to turn the prices down.
Sure.
Right, because we live in a communist country where the state controls commerce, right?
Economics. That was what was in my economics 101 textbook. I don't know what else anyone else is reading.
I'm sure he never took an economics class. That's
Where was it that one of the Pennsylvania schools? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Any sense of what she's like?
Oh, geez. So the first press conference yesterday, I was not able to attend because I was working on the cover story, and I feel like I really missed out.
That's what yeah. There was one claim in there about she said that the Trump administration is the most transparent and accessible president in American history. And at first I was rolling my eyes like, ugh, here we go again. But is there some truth to that? Because it feels like the media and the voters don't want to take him for his word, but he's pretty clear and open about what he wants to do and the harm that he wants to wreak and havoc upon the country. But somehow when you look at legacy media and voters, they always seem to be like, no, he's not really going to do that. What are you talking about? Am I missing something here?
No, I don't think you are. I'm like nodding. Like, yes, I do totally hear you. I mean, I think there is something to the fact that Trump is more accessible in some ways than his predecessor was to the press. And I think part of that is just, I mean, you've seen this from Trump throughout his career in public life, is that he loves the media and he hates the media. He loves the media and he hates the media, especially legacy media. He particularly cares what the New Yorker and the New York Times are writing about him, which is interesting. I mean, and in the same breath, he's denouncing the liberal media as, corrupt and fake and everything else. But yeah, there's definitely an interesting tension there.
He never broke into the New York. I mean, the New York power scene never accepted him as anything other than sort of a phony that he is. They never, and I think he's always resented that his entire life.
Oh, absolutely.
I know. I was gonna finish your thought. I had a different question.
Oh, just that. I mean, I don't know if Jim, you're referring specifically to the big real estate developers in New York City, but certainly, I mean, we've seen that throughout his career.
Yeah.
As a journalist, I've been kind of, like you're in the middle of it there. I'm a news talk person right now, so far from my original broadcasting roots. But when I look at the headlines out of legacy media, I don't see the Times and the Post of the 1970s here. I see a lot of headline writing that seems to be courting his good graces. But are you seeing that as well from your vantage point?
I'm a bit sensitive to that kind of criticism. Not that I'm like personally offended or anything, but just no. I mean, I do feel like that there's a lot of focus on headlines. For one thing, reporters don't write their own headlines generally. I certainly don't. I'm also terrible at writing my own headlines, by the way. So thank God for that. Not exactly concise.
But I think that's what I mean, is that I think that the editorial folks are taking a less confrontational approach that is totally entitled to them than they used to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably to some extent a fair criticism. I mean, of course, you have to separate out the editorial folks from the hard news folks. There certainly is a lot of very adversarial, well-sourced reporting happening right now into this administration. We saw it the last time. I think we're going to see it for sure this time. In terms of the corporate owners of these media companies, I think that's where, and that might be what you were referring to, JP, like the decision by Jeff Bezos to kill the Washington Post endorsement of Kamala Harris and that kind of thing. Like, you're seeing more kowtowing to the president from the elites, frankly.
I hate to cut you off. We have to leave it there for today. Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade. Read all of his writing at thewashingtonblade.com. Thank you for being here today. Folks, the Matt McNeil Show is coming up next. Stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you have a vehicle you no longer need? Are you a little cash strapped? Rudy Luther Toyota will pay you for your use.